Hi there, I'm pro saxophonist Jamie Anderson. You're watching Get Your Sax Together, and on this video I'm going to show you how to make your reeds work on your saxophone. Reeds can be the bane of every saxophonist's life, and they're really expensive. So in this video I'm going to try and teach you how to make those reeds work so you get more value for money and get more reeds in the box working and you're not throwing away all those rubbish ones. Before we do that, if you enjoy Get Your Sax Together, please remember to subscribe to the channel, click the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. Go and check out my Instagram, some cool stuff on there. And I've put together a PDF which you can get by clicking the link down in the description. I've put the main points from today's video in there, so you've got a reference sheet. You can print it off and follow it through as we go through today's lesson, trying to get these little bleeders working. Here's a pro tip. The best thing you can do is try and make a video about reeds, because the first 3 reeds I got out were absolutely brilliant, and I'm trying to find a rubbish one for this video. However, I found this one. It is a terrible reed, so we're going to try and work on this one and get it going. Now, before we start talking about what we can do to work the reed, it's very important that you take your reed off your mouthpiece when you finish playing and put it in a reed case. There's a video linked up there all about how to clean your saxophone and what you can put your reeds in. I've got this Rico humidified reed case that I keep all my reeds in, and you can get 8 reeds in there of any woodwind instrument, so that's quite cool. So first thing we do is we need to flatten the table on the back of the reed where it touches the mouthpiece to get a great seal and a real compression in the sound, so that no air, microscopic amounts of air, leak out the side and spoil the power of our sound. So to do that, I'm going to use the vital tool, which you've probably heard about. It's called a Reed Geek. Now, this part of the reed is the part that's in contact with the flat table of the mouthpiece. So we're just going to use very gentle strokes with the Reed Geek and just take away any microscopic fibers and any little uneven parts of the reed so that is perfectly flat. So here's the Reed Geek, and we're just going to use one of the edges and just gently back and forward. But that's just going to take off tiny amounts of material and make that nice and flat. There's only a tiny amount of burr coming off the reed, but that's all you want to do. And you would do this every time before you play. And that is now feeling nice and smooth. Remember to wet the reed all the way down to the end, because it needs to have that slight moisture to clamp on and stick to the table of the mouthpiece. So let's give our reed a little wet. Okay, so far so good. We have got a nice flat back of the reed. It's nice and moist, and then we're going to put it on our mouthpiece. And the next step is to check that both sides of the reed are the same strength. Most of the time with reeds, you find that one side is really fluffy and dull and the other side will play okay. So we need to balance how thick and how much material is on both sides of the reed. To do that, we're just going to use our mouthpiece and neck. So I'm going to put the reed on. Now what we need to do is close off one side of the reed with our lip pressed against our tooth. So we shut down one side of the reed and we just blow the mouthpiece and the neck, and then swap around different sides to check which side of the reed is softer or harder. Here we go. I've had a little test of which side I think is softer or harder. It takes a bit of practice getting used to shutting off one side of the reed, but you'll get used to it. And what I think is that this side of the reed is vibrating much more freely than this side of the reed. So before we do that, a little note about the zones on the reed. Now we've already talked about the flat back. That's fine, we don't need to adjust that anymore. So the first line you need to make on your reed is where the reed comes away from the mouthpiece and stops touching the mouthpiece. So let's make a mark across the reed there. And on my reed, that is about there. What we do then is we draw a line from the middle of that line to the corner of each reed, and we get these V-shaped segments, which are called the wings of the reed, which we're going to adjust with the Reed Geek to balance the wings. Imagine the wings of an airplane. You need to balance the wings so that the plane flies straight. So I'm just going to adjust my reed with the Reed Geek. So what we can do to adjust this is just use the kind of snub nose on the end of the Reed Geek and just gently try and take away some of those fibers on that side. We never adjust that central portion right in the middle of the V at the very tip of the reed. So we just work in the wings. So I'm going to take a little bit off there, not much. And we can keep the reed on the mouthpiece for this, and I'm going to retest. That's actually getting a lot better now. I'm just going to adjust another tiny bit to make it exactly even. Here we go. So I'm going to use the end of the Reed Geek and just take off a tiny bit from the side there, working up to the tip. Now I'm going to retest. And that's pretty good now. Now those two things could revolutionize how many reeds you can use. Just flattening the back of the table and then balancing the wings of the reed, that's probably all you're going to need to do to get 80% of your reeds going again. An extra step that you can add is you can take the reed off the mouthpiece and just hold it up to a bright light. I've got nice bright studio lights in here, so that's great. And you can have a look at the reed and see if you can see any sort of rogue fibers or dark areas or unevenness in that horseshoe shape of the reed. And you can also actually use your fingers, and then with a bit of practice you can get sensitive enough to just feel how much give there is. I would say that this side ever so slightly needs a tiny bit of material taking off it because it's not quite as flexible. I'm going to hold it up to the light, look for little patches that you can, just like a pencil eraser, you can almost erase them off the reed to get this thing really vibrating and singing. So let's do that. Keep retesting. So I'm going to put the reed back on and I'm going to test it with the whole sax. So in actual fact, it still feels very stuffy in general, even though the two wings are balanced. So what I'm going to do is take a bit more material off the reed, off those wings and that horseshoe shape, and see if I can free up the reed a bit from being so stuffy. So I'm going to work it with the Reed Geek and take a bit more off there. So for this job, I can keep the reed on the mouthpiece and just work it with the Reed Geek. I'm actually just going to use this beveled edge of the Reed Geek and I'm going to work it down like this. Try and do quite small adjustments at a time. You can always take a bit more off, but it's impossible to put it back, so remember that. Okay, I've done that now. Now let's retest. Okay, still a bit of stuffiness there and not really popping out nicely in the low register. So the last thing we can do for the low register is take away some of the stuff at the back of the reed, just at the end of the scoop, at the end of the cut of the reed. So that really stiff material there, that'll help us get the low notes out. So I'm going to take a bit off there, free up a bit more stuffiness on the wings and the horseshoe, and then see how we do. Okay, so that reed is now working a lot better, and I reckon I could do a gig on that reed. Now there is an almost unlimited amount of folklore to do with reeds in the saxophone community. Soak your reeds in vodka, do this, that, the next thing. I can't cover it all in this video, so I've just tried to give you a few basic tips using your Reed Geek that will help you get your reeds back on the road. Even if you just flatten the table before you play, that's really going to make a difference in the long term to your playing. So go for that one, work the wings, take off the thick material at the back if the low notes are giving you bother. You're bound to ruin a few as you practice and get better at that. I've ruined loads of reeds practicing like this. However, with practice, you'll be able to get some of those troublesome reeds back on the road and save yourself some money and get more reeds working out of the box. That's it for this week's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you can save yourself a bit of money and get some of those rubbish reeds working again. If you're enjoying the content on the channel, please do subscribe. Click the bell icon to be notified when I upload new videos. Go and check out my Instagram feed. And don't forget, I've put together a little PDF of the main points of today's video. You can go down into the description and get your free PDF there. Don't forget, there's loads of other great content all over the channel. Go and check out some of my other videos. And I'll see you next time on Get Your Sax Together. And you'll get more value for money out of each box. That was a rubbish sign off.